Well, hello again. This is Philip Steiger at thebest3d.com with another daily dose of Project Dog Waffle. This one here will be split over pdhowler initially, and then we'll go down to version 3.5. And the reason is that one of our new customers who have bought 3.5 with our current promotion for just $9 is a game developer and interested in learning how to best work with sprite sheets. Now, sprite sheets are basically arrays of images. It's a layout where maybe you split it up into a 2x2, right? If you have just 4 images, you have number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. You might not even have number 4, right? It might be actually without. It might just need 3 images. Typically, it's something where you have perhaps a square image that contains a bunch of images. But it could be many different layouts, different scenarios. Let's take, for instance, let's say you have a game in which the images are going to need to be 256 by 256, right? 256 pixels each. And so what we'll do, let's say we need, how many do we need? Let's say we have 9 images in all. So we could lay it out in a 2x8, 2x5, and then there will be a couple of empty ones because there's a total of 10. A 3x3 would be perfect. So now what's the size? 256 times 3 is 768. So we do a 768 by 768. There we go. And you could actually make an entry. If that's the size you do a lot, I think I showed in an earlier daily dose how you can make some presets. In version 3, you would go to the file and there's a settings or preferences menu somewhere. In version 6 or pdhowler, you'll see it here under settings. Once you're in settings, you can go and make your new entries right here, which will be saved in a default size file. Let me adjust that microphone a little bit. There you go. So let's say we want to split this up, but we don't want to actually mark it with images. There is a tool that you can use for that, which is the artist guide. The artist guides, when you enable it, and you can also usually in earlier versions find it out here somewhere. Look in the window menu for artist guides. What you can do is you can lay out these cells in different ways. And so, for instance, you could go up here and say, well, no, I need a 3x3, right? Or 3x2, for instance, here for a different scenario with your sprites. So lay it out in a 3x3. That's not actually drawing into the image. It's just overlaying a sort of a set of black squares with some diagonal crisscross. And so with that, you can now simply use that as a reference to paint and draw your sprite sheets, right? So a sprite sheet essentially will be, let's say we're doing a little explosive thing. So we do a large cover. Let's make sure we can change the size. So we go to the brush, the custom brush, and allow the brush transform. And in particular, we'll go to change the size now to a fairly small initially and just put a little dab here. There's nothing here. Okay, and then we'll do a little bit more here. And then we'll go and increase the size of these and do a little bit more here. So you see how I'm basically going and increasing the size gradually here as I'm going through my sequence that will show the animation. The sprite sheet really holds an animation, but it holds all of these frames into a single image. All right, now towards the end, I need to also have a little bit of an opening where the whole thing shows like a ring and dissipates. So now I've created a sprite sheet, right? Frame number 1, frame number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And there's a couple of ways that you will want to work with this. One of those, of course, is to first of all save it, store the image right there, just in case you need to get back to that. And you see it is still the array of 3x3 sub-images, but it is in a single image, and that's a sheet of sprites, a sprite sheet. You can also go and save that, very highly recommended at that point, but you can also turn it into an animation, because if this represents an explosion, you want to see what it looks like as you play it frame by frame or cell by cell. And there is a tool for that, which is called array to animation. This is an array of cells, an array of images, and we can turn this into an animation. That's actually a free plugin. Let me show you where to grab that. Now, when you go to the plugins, look for the one that says array. There, array to animation. Okay, and in fact, you see this image here with this walking dude. That's in Poser. It's a walk sequence that was done in Poser against the blue. You know, this one here essentially will convert the AVI to an anim brush. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at array to animation. There. Click on that. All right, so the array to animation is a plugin, a free plugin that you can add to your installed dog waffle. So if you got 3.5, first of all, make sure you get the 3.7 update and then run it once as administrator, because it needs to create a sub temp folder inside the application folder, which UAC on Windows 7 or Vista doesn't like you to do. So make sure you run it as administrator just once. And then once you add this plugin, it will, let me click on that. Actually, you can see the tutorial. This will show you how to add the plugin, and then how to create a sequence of frames. And in this case, it's a sequence of dudes walking or running along here. That was done in Poser. It's a great tool now to take this array and convert it to an animation. So let's go back to this one that I've done just a second ago. All right, a minute. And see where we can find it. Well, of course, it's under the plugins panel, wherever you access that, or in the more recent version 5, if you have the PD Pro 5.1b, or in PD Pro 6, also known as pdhowler. You can go to the filters and look for all plugins, and then there will be a miscellaneous, and in there you should find array to animation. That's after you've actually installed this plugin. Now if you have pdhowler, it probably came with it. It should, and if not, you know where to grab it. It's a free plugin. So let's run this, and what it will ask you is, well, how many images do you think you have in this big image? This is a sheet. It doesn't see it. It just assumes and trusts you, brother. Let's go in here and say, well, we got 3 horizontally and we got 3 vertically. Now that's the layout of the cells. Maybe this last image we don't like so much, or maybe the first image we don't like so much, and maybe maybe we don't actually no, the first one will be used, but the last one or the last 2 ones might not. Right? We may have only 7 images. So you need to indicate how many cells you actually are going to use. In this case, we have a total of 9, so I'm going to use 9. And there we go. Click on that. And what it's going to do now is create a small image that's the size of a third of the original, because it sees that it's a 3x3 subdivision with a total of 9 images to be copied in there. So it creates a frame sequence that we see here now. And it has turned this into an animation. And let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 frames that were in our sprite sheet. And see, the sprite sheet is gone, but we saved it here. So that's why it's really important to do a quick snapshot before you experiment with these plugins. You are converting it to a different format. It is now an animation. So if you wanted to save this, you'd go here to the, if you wanted to save it to file, that is, you'd go here to the functions, and you could temporarily go back to, to creating a new one there. Replace existing image, create a new image, and then save that. I don't know if you can save it directly to, let's see. Yeah, we don't have an option here to save it directly to a file. So you'd want to perhaps take this animation and save that as an image sequence, and or just save it as an animation in its native format right there. That's a DWA file, dog waffle animation. You can also save it as an AVI file. Make sure if you're still working with this image that you use the Lagarif or some other lossless codec. That's really important, because otherwise your image is going to gradually deteriorate every time you open it and save it again. So the codec, you need to understand what codecs are and what they do and how they work. Some of them are really great to making the files very small, but they are lossy, just like a JPEG image is lossy. So you could also save it as as an image sequence, and there you will have a choice of TIFF, Targa, JPEGs, PNG, BMP files. If you had an alpha channel, you would probably save it as a Targa, but the animation doesn't carry an animated alpha channel, so you'd be out of luck there. You'd want to make sure that you convert it to something different first. We'll probably be working on a tool to load it straight into the brush, because there you would keep the alpha channel on each frame. So that's a thought of the moment, the totem. So anyway, well, let's have a look at it. If I now disable the, what is it here, the artist guides, we now see a single cell, and we can scrub through this animation, and you can go and play it. Bing, really fast. Now this is too fast. Let's click on FPS, frames per second. Let's say we want to see it just 5 frames a second. That's a smarter way to look at it for just a few frames like this. Now let's say if you wanted to turn this into more frames. You have 9 frames that you painted, and you wanted to turn this into, oh, I don't know, 20 frames or 30 frames. You can do what we call time stretch. And time stretch is actually something that's very useful in cartooning also, cartoon animations. Because basically what you do is you say, well, I have a few frames and I want to turn this into more frames, but I'm too lazy and I don't want to draw the other frames that are in between. So what you can do is time stretch it, and it will blend, transition or interpolate the frames in between for you. Now it doesn't do a morphing transform, it doesn't do an analysis of shapes and try to match one shape with the other to morph to it. It does the easy thing, but you know, since you're lazy, I think it's okay for the program to be kind of lazy too. And what we'll do is we'll say, let's make it 2 times bigger or 3 times. Let's see, the number of frames right now is 9, and we'll turn it into 30 frames, right? And then we'll do the frame blending, right? What's this? Oh, this is multiplied by if we wanted it like 10 times more, and we didn't want to do the math or whatnot. But there's a couple of different ways. Half the frames, double the frames, or even more. And then here you could say, no, let's make it 5 times the frame. So you have this many. And whatever it is you choose here, when you say you want to frame blend, that's when you'll get those additional frames transitioning rather than just copying from one and then suddenly jumping to the next frame, right? If you didn't do the frame blending, it would really just take the first frame and make it 5 times that, and then you have another frame and you'll get 5 of that frame, and then you get another frame, and then each of those becomes basically 5 frames out of one, but there is no transition going from one to another. With this, with the frame blending, it is blending, it is transitioning from one frame to the other as it's going through those. All right, and there's other ways to use this, of course, and that's if you are at, let's say you are at 30 frames a second, you want to convert it to 24, it will do the math to tell you exactly how many frames you need, and prepare it for that. There's some custom options here. If you say, you know, you're currently running at whatever 50 frames a second, you need to go to gazillion frames a second. That's another option there too. All right, so let's say we need a total of 30 frames. That's what we had initially. Let's go do that, and bingo, we're done. So now what you see is that we have many more frames, and they're all interpolated. In a case like this, this works beautifully because, you know, we have basically a very blobby, noisy set of images, and the transitions, the blending of these, keep it that way and make it very suitable for further use. Now you may want to finish this. The last frame that we have here is not totally blank, and we want to evaporate that gas cloud or whatever it is here. So go to the last frame and add a few more of that. All right, so yes, click on the plus sign, and then actually add one more, or actually no, let's do this here. Let's add 1 or 2 more, and then let's grab this one and clear it. Let's go to the clear and add that one as well. Okay, so we have basically something like this here. We can go and erase this one as well, and to say, well, let's not erase it all the way. So let's use that interactive undo we have up here as a shortcut, or you could go to the filter menu and say fade last action. Remember that? Okay, and then so you can say, well, okay, let's go in short increments. This one here is going to be almost gone, right? And then this one here will erase also, but it will be not that much done. So we'll go fade last action a little bit more. Actually, it should be the other way around, shouldn't it? Yeah. Well, you get the idea. It's basically a way to reduce this image to smithereen and eventually have it gone, but just not too quickly. All right, there you go. So we have now a couple of frames before it actually disappears. Even though we don't expand it anymore, it will blend and it will just look really fine and dandy as we animate this. So now we can go back to, oh, I don't know, 30 frames a second. Let's do that. Bingo, and we have a nice little transition. Now there are other ways to make transitions, and we'll take a look at those as well, and there are other ways to work with the sprite sheets, and that will be up in the next section.